Hello children, welcome to my educational channel EasyEd. Today we will discuss about Kingdom Fungi. Those who have not watched the earlier videos of Kingdom Protista, Monera and 5 Kingdom classification can go to my YouTube channel. We have all our videos there. Now coming to Kingdom Fungi, we will discuss general characteristics of fungi. In that we will first see habitat. Fungi are cosmopolitan in nature. That means they occur in air, water, soil, everywhere, and are also found on plants and animals. When found in plants and animals, they will be parasites. They grow in warm and humid condition. Means warm and humid conditions are very favorable for fungi, for the growth of fungi, and that is why if you have noticed, food at home is placed inside the refrigerator. Why refrigeration of food is done? To prevent the spoilage of food from fungus and bacteria as well as. Now coming to the structure of fungi, fungi are filamentous, means the body of the fungi is in the form of a filament. And what is a filament? Filament is a thread-like long structure. Except yeast. Yeast is a fungi which is unicellular. So except yeast, other fungi are filamentous in nature. Their body consists of long, slender, thread-like structures called as hyphae. See into the diagram. These are the long, slender, thread-like structures which form the body of the fungi, which form the filamentous body of the fungi. And these long, slender, thread-like structures are called as hyphae. Network of hyphae is known as mycelium. Mycelium is what? Network of hyphae. So this is the structure of fungi. Fungi is filamentous in nature. It exhibits long thread-like structures which are called as hyphae, and network of many hyphae forms mycelium. Now these hyphae may be of two types. The hyphae of the fungus may be of two types: septate and aseptate. In biology, as I have told earlier also, the term a, when it is included in any word, that means without. So septate is with septa and aseptate is without septa. These are the two kinds of hyphae. You can see here in the diagram that inside the hyphae, in some cases, a partition, cross walls are seen. There are some cross walls or partitions inside the hyphae which give it a shape of separate cells having one nucleus each. This separating cross wall which separates the hyphae into parts is known as septa, and such a hyphae is called as septate hyphae, and it shows uninuclear condition. Uni means one. It shows one nucleus in each compartment. This condition is uninucleate. In other type of hyphae, which is aseptate, that means without septa. You can see here the hyphae is continuous. No septa means no partition, no compartmentalization is there, and so it is a continuous hyphae. And in this case, the nuclei are seen here. See, these are nuclei, and this gives it a multinucleate condition. As there are no separations, there are no partitions, nucleus, you can see many nucleus in a hyphae, in a portion of hyphae. So this condition, this multinucleate condition is known as cenocytic condition. So we can say that hyphae is of two types: septate with septa, that is uninucleate with cross walls between them, and aseptate without any cross walls, without any partition, and showing the cenocytic condition, means multinucleate condition. So this is about the structure of fungus. One more point in the structure is that cell wall of the fungi is made up of chitin and polysaccharides. As cell wall in plants is made up of cellulose, in fungi cell wall is made up of chitin and polysaccharides. So after structure, we will look into the nutrition in fungi. You all know that fungi is heterotrophic in nature. It shows heterotrophic mode of nutrition as it does not contain chloroplast. It cannot prepare its food and so it is heterotrophic. That means it depends on other organisms for food. Now this heterotrophic mode of nutrition can again be of three types. In fungi we can see three types of heterotrophic nutrition. What are they? Saprophytes, parasites and symbiotes. Means saprophytic nutrition, parasitic nutrition and symbiotic nutrition. So what are saprophytes? You all know they feed on dead and decay matter. So those fungi which absorb soluble organic matter from the dead substrates are called as saprophytes, and this kind of nutrition is saprophytic mode of nutrition. For example, bread mold. You might have seen bread in your home. If it is kept for few more days and not refrigerated, you will find some white substances or green substances growing on that bread. That is what fungus, that is bread mold, which is commonly seen in homes. Now, second mode of nutrition in fungi, heterotrophic mode, is parasitic. You all know what are parasites? Parasites need a living body. As saprophytes feed on dead and decay matter, parasites live on or inside a living body, another living body, which may be a plant or may be an animal, and it takes its food from that particular body on which it lives. So this is called parasitic mode of nutrition, and such kind of fungi are called as parasitic fungi. Example, if you all know, is Puccinia. Puccinia is a fungus which is a parasite on wheat. Wheat rust. It is a disease of wheat. Wheat rust is a disease which is caused due to fungus, that is Puccinia. Puccinia is a fungus which causes disease wheat rust, and due to this the yield of wheat is very much lowered. One more example I will tell you of fungus which is parasite. It lives on mustard leaves. If you have ever seen mustard leaves, you will see some white spots on the leaves. These white spots on the mustard leaves is due to the parasitic fungus. So fungus are parasites, maybe on plants or on animals, and parasites are what? Which live on living plants or animals. Now, another and important kind of heterotrophic mode of nutrition exhibited by fungi is symbiotic mode of nutrition, and such fungus are called as symbionts. So, what are symbionts? What is symbiosis? Symbiosis is an association of two organisms which are in mutual relationship, means both of them benefit each other in one or other kind. In parasite will only use the host on which it is living. But in symbiosis, in symbiotic mode of nutrition, two organisms come together and they are in mutual relationship. They benefit each other. They do not harm each other. Mostly it happens that one provides food and other provides shelter. Like that, there is a mutual relationship. So such a relationship is known as symbiotic relationship, or it is a symbiotic mode of nutrition, and Example in fungus are lichens and mycorrhiza. Lichens and mycorrhiza are the symbiotic association of fungus with algae and roots of higher plants respectively. That means when a fungus associates with algae and forms a symbiotic relationship, it is known as lichens. And when a fungus associates with the roots of higher plants and forms a symbiotic relationship association, that is known as mycorrhiza. So what is mycorrhiza? Mycorrhiza is a symbiotic relationship between fungus and roots of higher plants. Similarly, lichens are symbiotic association of fungus with algae. These are very important. Please listen carefully and learn it, and many questions are asked from this topic. Now, after nutrition, we will come to the reproduction in fungi. Reproduction in fungi can be of three types. We can see three types of reproduction in fungi. They are vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction, and sexual reproduction. Fungi exhibits three kinds of reproduction: vegetative, asexual, and sexual. Vegetative reproduction is again of three types, by three types, that is fragmentation, fission, and budding. What happens in fragmentation? The hyphae is divided into some fragments. You might be knowing fragments means pieces. Hyphae is divided into some pieces. It breaks down into some pieces that are called as fragments, and in turn each fragment grows into a complete hyphae. This is called as fragmentation, and this is a mode of vegetative reproduction in fungi. Main hyphae undergoes fragmentation, forms new fragments. These fragments in turn grow into a new hyphae. Now, second type of vegetative reproduction is fission. Fission mostly occurs in unicellular cells, unicellular fungi. And what is fission? Simply, we have studied in Monera also, the cell divides into two parts. Divides, it breaks down, a furrow exists, it breaks down into two parts. Some part of the protoplasm is shared, as well as nucleus also is shared between these two cells, and they are further separated, forming two cells. Each will grow into its hyphae. Each will form its fungus. So this is fission. Third type of vegetative reproduction is budding. As the name tells, in the parent cell, a small bud arises in the main cell. Some part of protoplasm as well as nucleus is also transferred into this bud. Gradually, the bud sheds off or separates from the original cell, forming a new cell, which in turn grows into a new hyphae. So these were the three kinds of vegetative reproduction in fungi. Now we will study about asexual and sexual reproduction. Commonly, you can understand that asexual and both sexual reproduction in fungi takes place with the help of spores, by the spores formation. Some spores are formed in asexual cycle, they are called as asexual spores, and in sexual cycle they are called as sexual spores. So asexual and sexual, both types of reproduction takes place by spore formation in fungi. And where are these spores formed? The spores are formed in a sac-like structure, in a spore-bearing body, that is called as sporangium. You can see here. Spores are formed in the fruiting body. What is a fruiting body? See in this picture. This is the hyphae mycelium. It elongates, it outgrows from one side, it elongates and in turn forms a sac like structure, a bag like structure, and this sac like structure is called as the fruiting body, and this fruiting body bears spores. Okay, now these spores may either be found inside the fruiting body or they are formed outside the fruiting body. So, when these spores are formed outside the fruiting body, they are called as exogenous spores, and when they are formed inside the fruiting body, they are called as endogenous spores. You can see here mycelium at the base, it is forming the fruiting body. Here, this is the fruiting body which is going to bear spores. Now, above the fruiting body, exogenous spores are formed. These are spores. And here, inside the fruiting body, that is inside the sporangium, spores are formed and they are called as endogenous spores. So, this is common thing in asexual as well as sexual reproduction in fungi, that asexual and sexual reproduction both takes place by the formation of spores. Spores are formed inside the fruiting bodies called as sporangium, that is fruit spore bearing body called as sporangium, and spores may be exogenous or endogenous. This is a common thing. Now coming to the sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction first, we will see asexual reproduction is by two kinds of spores. What are they? Either by conidia or by sporangiospores or zoospores. Means asexual reproduction in fungi is by conidia and by sporangiospores or zoospores. Now, if you have understood the previous sporangium and spore forming bodies, it will be very easy for you that see here conidia are of this kind. They are the exospores. Conidia is formed on the fruiting body, and that what is it called? Conidiophore. So conidia are the spores, and the spore bearing body which bears the spores of conidia, they are called as conidiophore. Conidia are exogenous spores. So by asexual reproduction, by conidia formation, that is by exogenous spores, fruiting body conidiophore produces spores conidia, and these will then shed off and each of the spore will grow into a mycelium or hyphae. Now, second is sporangiospores or zoospores. Sporangiospores, you can see, are endogenous spores formed inside the sporangium, and this spore bearing body here is known as sporangiophore. All these terminologies are very important. You have to remember it, you have to learn it. So, understand it well, which will make your learning and remembering easy. Many questions are asked from the terminology. So, kindly learn the names of the spores, spore bearing body, and all these. So, we can say that conidia and sporangiospores or zoospores are asexual spores in fungi. Questions are asked from it. Names of asexual spores. You can write conidia or zoospores, whatever it is asked. Now, what is a cycle? Asexual cycle. Spores are formed on sporangiophore, and what happens? Spores are formed on the fruiting bodies, maybe conidiophore or sporangiophore, whatever it is. What will happen? These spores will disperse, these will shed off, and each spore in turn will again form a hyphae. Each spore in turn will form its hyphae or mycelium. Similarly, here in sporangiospores, what will happen? These spores will come out from the body of the fruiting body, and each spore will then again turn into a new mycelium. So this was asexual cycle. Now coming to the sexual cycle, We know that sexual reproduction is also by spores. Now, sexual reproduction is by three kinds of spores, which are oospores, ascospores, and basidiospores. Now, you have to understand it well, hear it with concentration. Now, see the differences. We have studied asexual spores in fungi, which are they? Conidia and uh, zoospores or spores. Now, these are sexual spores in fungi. What are they? Oospores, ascospores, and basidiospores. There are three kinds of sexual spores. Three means of sexual reproduction in fungi is by oospores, ascospores, and basidiospores. Oospores are the spores formed as a result of gametic fusion. By the fusion of gamete, we will just now further study the cycle. They are oospores. Now, what are ascospores? Ascospores are again endogenous spores. Where they are formed inside a bag like structure, a sac like structure, you can say fruiting body. This sac like structure is called as ascus, and the mycelium hyphae which will bear this ascus is called as ascocarp. So, by ascospores are endogenous spores formed inside the ascus, and ascus bearing body is called as ascocarp. Means ascocarp bears ascus, ascus bears ascospores. Similarly, basidiospores, you can see here that basidiospores are exogenous. They are formed outside the fruiting body, and the body on which these basidiospores are formed is known as basidium. This is known as basidium, and the mycelium that holds this basidium is basidiocarp. So basidiocarp holds basidium on which basidiospores are formed. So these three kinds of spores, sexual spores in fungi. Now you have to study the sexual cycle of fungi. Broadly, you can understand like this. The sexual cycle of fungi takes place in three steps. What are these three steps? Plasmogamy, karyogamy, and meiosis. Plasmogamy. Plasmo means plasm, protoplasm. Gamy means fusion. So what in plasmogamy, what happens? Fusion of protoplasm takes place. Karyogamy, gamy fusion. Karyo means nucleus. So fusion of nuclei takes place. And then meiosis. You all know meiosis is a reduction division. So sexual cycle. What are the steps in fungi? Plasmogamy, karyogamy, and meiosis. I will make you understand by this representation of cycle. Now listen carefully, and you have to learn this cycle. Making such a cycle in exams give you more numbers. Now here you can see these are two myceliums. Okay, myceliums are, I have written here N. What is this N? This is the ploidy. Ploidy, you all know, is the number of chromosomes. N number of chromosomes present in any organism. This is ploidy, and we denote it by small n. And when it is only N without any number, it is called as haploid. Okay, fungi is haploid in nature. So two myceliums which are of haploid condition, they may be of compatible mating types, then only sexual reproduction will take place. Okay, so two haploid hyphae of compatible mating types come together. Two compatible mating types hyphae come together which are haploid in condition. They will produce their gametes. This will produce its gamete and other one will produce its gamete. Now they are producing their gametes. Gametes again are haploid in condition. They are also N. As the parent body is N, gametes will also be N, that is haploid. Now what happens? These gametes come together and fusion of these gametes takes place. Fusion, just now I told you the first step takes place, that is plasmogamy. The two gametes come together and fuse. And when they fuse, what happens? They fuse together. Now at this stage only their protoplasm is fused. See, they are having their separate nucleus still. Nucleus is not fused, only they have united, they have fused, and their protoplasm is mixed with each other. This is the first step just now we studied of sexual reproduction, called as plasmogamy. Now what happens as a result of plasmogamy? Now you are seeing here that there is a one cell having two different nuclei. This condition, this is N haploid, this is N haploid. This condition is known as N plus N condition, and we call it as dikaryophase. Dikaryophase, and this particular cell is called as dikaryon. See what happens? What is a dikaryon? Two gametes fuse together and only plasmogamy has taken place. Karyogamy hasn't taken place. So this cell is having two nuclei, and how n from this and n from this. So we are writing it as n plus n. Only plasmogamy has taken place, and this results in formation of dikaryon, and this phase is called as dikaryophase. This was the first step. Now the second step will take place. Now the second step will take place, and karyogamy, that means fusion of two nuclei will take place. Now these two nuclei will also fuse together in the process of, in the step of karyogamy, and now you can see one cell having single nuclei. Here these two nuclei have been fused. Now this condition you all might be knowing, which is formed as a result of gametic fusion, is called as zygote. Gametes on fusion form what? Zygote. And now this is 2n condition, means diploid condition. How diploid? N plus N, which were two separate nuclei, have fused with each other, forming a nuclei having both the characters. Now this is 2n condition, and this cell is known as zygote. And you all know zygote then undergoes meiosis. Meiosis you all might be knowing. Meiosis is a reductional division in which one diploid cell forms four haploid cells. So zygote undergoes meiosis to form four haploid cells, and these are spores. Now, after karyogamy, after the formation of zygote, fungus forms fruiting bodies, as you have studied just now, ascus or basidium. Fungus forms fruiting bodies in which this meiosis takes place and results in the formation of spores. Again, these spores are haploid in condition. Reduction division has taken place. 2n zygote has formed n spores. One zygote forms four spores. Now again each spore is now haploid, and in turn it will grow into its mycelium. Again it will form its mycelium. See the sexual cycle. Two hyphae of mating type producing their gametes. Plasmogamy taken place. Dikaryon formed, karyogamy takes place, zygote formed. Here fruiting body will be found in the fungus. Inside the fruiting body, zygote will undergo meiosis, again forming spores. Zygote is diploid. Spores again are reductional division as a result of they are haploid, and each spore will form its own mycelium. This is the sexual cycle of fungi. One thing here I want to explain you, that this is the normal cycle. In some cases, what happens? In some cases, after the fusion of two haploid cells, immediately zygote is formed. Means the intermediate stage of dikaryophase or N plus N is not formed. Two gametes fuse together by plasmogamy and immediately karyogamy takes place, and this result in directly in zygote. So this phase is not there. This phase is found in some classes of fungi. You will just now study further ascomycetes and basidiomycetes. Okay, in ascomycetes and basidiomycetes, dikaryophase intermediate phase is shown. Dikaryon is there, but in some cases, as a result of plasmogamy, immediately karyogamy takes place and zygote is formed, and further cycle is similar. So this is sexual cycle of fungi, and again you have to learn all these terminology very well. Questions are asked from this topic, and don't get confused between 2n condition and n plus n condition. 2n condition and n plus n condition are totally different. N plus n karyogamy has not taken place, but in zygote 2n karyogamy has taken place. Okay, and this is called as n plus n cell is called dikaryon, and 2n is called as zygote. So this was all about the general characteristics of fungi. Next, we will discuss classification of fungi. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you.